Thank you, Denyse. It feels a bit strange to be up here talking about something other than big data, because even this afternoon the topic was consumer understanding, and I think every single speaker talked about big data. So I think it's time I put things right. So I want to talk about winning customer centricity and what I consider to be the future for market research and insight. We talk a lot about big data, and I think the reason is because it's the hot topic. It's big, it's sexy, and size does matter when we're talking about information. So it's a hot topic. Everybody's talking about big data, and people, well, sorry folks, we're just a little bit ordinary. We're small, we're slow, and we're boring, at least to most businesses. And I think it's a little bit unfair, because after all, it's people that make a difference. So as I said, I want to put things right. I think big data's become a little bit the star of the show, a little bit of a prima donna. And I think it's time that we put big data back in its place. Because data's always existed. It's just gotten bigger. The volume and velocity and the other 3, or is it 5 V's that big data is claiming now. Data is data, and it's what we do with it that really matters. People are important. I'm often quoted as saying, there may be customers without brands, but there are no brands without customers. And think about that. There may be customers without brands, but there are no brands without customers. So how is it we've come to forget about the customer? Marketing talk about the 5 P's, and the first one is P for people. And yet, according to Esamar, we are spending 41% of market research spend on product, price, and packaging, and a further 26% on promotion, copy testing, and such like. In their latest study, they said we're spending 16% on understanding people. But how can we get the pack, the price, and the product right if we don't know who the product is for? So people, we have to be spending more money on understanding our people better. We talk about the customer as boss these days, and certainly their voice is being heard. So we need to be spending more thinking about people and less about big data. Now, according to Forrester, at least they agree with me, they said since 2010, we've now come into the age of the customer. After the age of manufacturing and distribution, we got into information, but now we're in the age of the customer. And it's companies such as Amazon or Zappos that really have made treating the customer well, customer experience, a really top priority and a USP for the companies. And they're doing well as a result. In the same study, they also showed that it's not just good for business, for the customer, it's also good for business. They showed that stock performance of those companies where customer experience is a top priority, the stock price grew 30% more than the S&P index and a whopping 70% more than those that didn't. That you can't argue with. Those are numbers that I'm sure any CEO would like to see. And in fact, their top company, which in the US was Sprint, that went on a customer experience improvement program, they saved $1.7 billion in the first year. As I said, I don't think any CEO can argue with those numbers. Customer experience, placing customers at the heart of business, thinking customer first in everything we do, is the way to grow a business these days. The Insight 2020 report from Millward Brown and Vermeer that came out a couple of weeks ago actually showed that if customer experience is a top 3 priority for a company, that 91% of the companies that put it as a top priority are in that leader group, compared to only 48% in the laggards group. So again, if it is a top priority sponsored by the CEO, and it has to be taken seriously by the whole company. Customer centricity makes good business sense. So, thinking customer first is the way we should be doing business today. But unfortunately, it's not a project that you can go about as most projects. You're not going to put a team together for a few weeks or a few months or even a few years. Customer centricity is a journey, not a destination. Why? Because the customer is constantly changing. And especially with technology today, we're changing faster and faster. So we can never say that we have become customer-centric. It is something we need to work at and remind ourselves of the importance of the customer every day. Now, in order to make a company customer-centric, you need a customer champion. It could be the CEO. After all, he's used to working with people. He looks after shareholders, after all, and if he's really good, his employees as well. It could be the CMO. But my feeling is, if he has to take a decision whether something is good for the brand or good for people, he would go with the brand. Now, in an ideal situation, that should be the same decision. But until it is, he should look after the brands. It could be a CCO, or a Chief Customer Officer, as Oracle and many other companies have started putting in place. But again, I think there's an opportunity for CMI, market research and insight specialists. After all, we know the customer better than anyone else. So I'd like to propose that we start to become the customer voice in our organizations and to become the customer centricity champion to grow the business based upon customer understanding. After all, we know customers better than anybody else. We spend our days, and quite often many of our nights too, thinking about our customers. So why don't we have that role today? As a result of big data, we see a lot of data scientists, business intelligence people, strategy and planning people, standing up and saying, we are the data champions, we should be in control of big data. My feeling is no, it should be market research and insight. As I said, we know the customers better than anybody else. We also know most departments in the company better than anybody else because we work with all of them. The reason I think that today management don't think about us is because we're not giving them what they want. I would have to say an exception for McDonald's because I was quite impressed with the dashboards that they were getting and on their mobiles, because today management is still generally getting information about the customer on email and spreadsheets. And I find that pretty shocking. Whereas what they do want are dashboards and mobile access, which is exactly what McDonald's management are getting. So they definitely are customer-centric or on a good road towards it. The other thing about it is that today, marketing feel totally overwhelmed by the amount of data they have, especially as it relates to social media and channel diversity. 2/3 of marketers today just can't cope with all the data. They need help. And I have to say, I think it's the marketing department that really has been impacted the most as a result of big data flowing into companies. Data is no longer coming only from market research. There is so much more. In fact, it's the minority these days of information that's available has come from market research. So we have to give management more of what they want. And I suppose it's for this reason that according to a study that was issued a couple of weeks ago in Adweek, they said that over 3/4 of marketers are not using behavioral data to segment. So what are they doing? Using demographics? It's sad in this day and age of data that the majority of marketers are not making use of it because they're just overwhelmed. They don't know where to start. So they really do need our help. And I think it's a wonderful opportunity for our profession because we are analysts and we know customers. You probably all have your insight process. If you don't talk to me afterwards, then I can help. But you probably have something like similar to this. Data and information turned into knowledge and understanding, and then looking at its importance for impacting attitudes and behavior, you develop your insights that hopefully lead to action and profit. There's a lovely Japanese proverb that says, insight without action is a daydream, but action without insight is a nightmare. And I know from some of my clients, they get very frustrated that marketing jump on data as soon as it's available, and they go immediately to action without understanding and developing insight from it. So again, I think we can help there. So what are you doing? Are you living in a daydream or a nightmare? Probably a little bit of both, if I know if you're like most companies or your clients are. So I want to make some changes, and I want to suggest some skills and ways that we can really become a customer centricity champion and help those poor marketeers and executives who are not making the right use of information. And as we say in English, we've got to get our ducks in a row. So we have to make 3 changes, in my opinion. The first one is we have to make the information that's available to us smarter. The second is to make it more useful. It's not being used in so many organizations, or very little of it is. And thirdly, to make it more supportive of those poor marketing and executives who are not getting what they want when they want it. So, how do we make information smarter? In my opinion, by understanding our customers better. And Art already mentioned that the most important, we work with the 4 W's, not the 5 W's and an H or something that Art mentioned. We work with the who, what, where, and why. And the most important of all is, of course, the why. The emotions, the values, and the motivations of why people do what they do. And that's what big data, or data in general, will provide us, is a better understanding of what they are doing, and we can then move on to the emotions and values and motivations. To give you an example, I don't know if there are any smokers in the room, are there? It's amazing, when I ask this question now, there's maybe 1 or 2 people in the room who put their hands up. I don't know whether it's they don't dare say so or whatever, but I'm sure even if you're a non-smoker, you remember the good old days when Marlboro was advertised with the cowboy. And what did the cowboy say about the smokers? He was independent, self-reliant. He was masculine, he was strong. But as you know, cigarettes can't advertise anymore except in retail, and definitely not showing people. But Marlboro still manages to get these same values portrayed, and they do that through their Formula One. Because it may not look like it, but the cowboy and the Formula One racing driver have a lot of similarities. There's a lot of things they have in common. They're self-dependent, self-reliant and independent, because even though they may have the team on the radio, when they are out on the car risking their lives, they're all alone. They're strong. It's a very physical sport. And they're masculine. And until a few years ago, there weren't any female racing drivers. So it's a perfect sponsorship from Marlboro, and it does enable them to continue to support the values that Marlboro has always portrayed. Now, if we talk about another of the whys, the emotions, if I say which brand has been able to connect with their consumers emotionally, what brand would you say? Any brand come to mind? Sorry? Dove. Yes, they have a connection. It's true. Coca-Cola maybe. The one I'm thinking of is Apple. Apple has been able to connect with its consumers in a way that very few other brands have been able to do. If you think about it, when a new product is launched, these are the sorts of scenes we see in outlets, in front of their stores, in countries across the world. People line up for hours, if not days, before the launch of a new iPhone or iMac. And then the day of the launch, we see things like this. Now, I don't know about you, but I've never seen anybody in a supermarket say, hey, I've just bought a bottle of milk. But they do for Apple. It's incredible that this guy is celebrating the fact he's just spent hundreds of dollars that he's given to Apple. And he's happy about it. He is proud about it. Now, does this posture remind you of anybody? You know, you would think he had just spent 2 hours sweating it out in a Formula One racing car and he'd won a race. And all he's done is given hundreds of dollars to Apple. Thank you. There's not many brands where their consumers celebrate the fact that they've been allowed to purchase a product from them. An emotional contact. So, make our data smarter, and we do that by understanding our customers better and really getting to the why of their behavior. Now, I can't leave talking about understanding customers without a little warning. We talk a lot about privacy, but I want to talk about what I consider to be almost data abuse. And I came across a couple of examples that scare me, I have to say. The first one is for hiring candidates. Now, I came across a company who had found that some of their workers, their best workers, had very short commutes and didn't use public transport. So in their job application form, they innocently put, if we hired you, how long would it take you to commute in the mornings? And do you have your own form of transport, or would you take public transport? Now, I don't know about you, but I'd be very upset if I found out that somebody else had got the job because they only had a 10-minute commute and I've got a 20-minute commute. It's statistically valid, but is it fair? I don't know. Another example, I don't know if any of you have these devices in your cars. Do any of you? They supposedly enable you to get cheaper insurance rates. It started in 2011 with Progressive in the US, and now in Europe a lot of companies are offering this. So you put the little device in your car and it shows what a wonderful driver you are. This is an example of somebody, their results. He's an A+ driver, fabulous. But he's only got a 10% discount. But he's got a potential of 31%. So how can he go from a 10% to a 31%? The only thing where he doesn't have an A+ rating is the time of day he drives. Now, if you think about it, an insurance company, they want people basically who spend very little time in their car. They want people who drive at times where there's a little risk of accidents. So, people that commute during the rush hour, no. People that drive at night, definitely a no. So the only way this guy can get his 31% discount is if he changes jobs or drives only during outside rush hours. It's impossible. So he is being shown that he could get 31%, but he never will get it, as I said, unless he changes jobs. Again, statistically valid, is it fair? So we're offered these devices supposedly to help us save money, but there's obviously other opportunities for the companies to earn money. So, I can't finish without talking about big data, because everybody's talking about big data, and it's been likened to oil. Great, you need to refine it in order for it to become a value, but I think we're missing a very important point. And that is that big data is only as useful as the questions you ask of it. Now, one thing that market research and insight people are good at, it's asking questions. Therefore, again, I think we should be looking after the analysis of big data and not leaving it to data scientists. Steve Jobs was often quoted as saying, people don't know what they want until you show it to them. Therefore, asking the question of people is not the way to do it. And I think today, with the amount of data we have, we don't need to ask as many questions of people. I've often been quoted as saying, market researchers will start to get the truth out of consumers when we stop asking them questions. And I don't think we're that far away from the Internet of Things, etc., to get the information from consumers without asking. An example here, I didn't take this photo down in the tent, but maybe later on tonight I will. But this guy is obviously, he's not as interested in the brand as the price of his alcohol. I'm sure you'd all agree. So we don't need to work on how we're going to get him to change brand, because it's the why that's important for this person. Why is he buying cheap alcohol? Is he homeless? Is he out of a job? Is he depressed? It's the whys that matter, and that's what we should be using data for, to understand the why and not the what of our customers. So information is only as useful as the questions we ask it, and that hasn't changed. And apologies to Wenger and Victorinox in Switzerland, where I come from, but this for me sums up big data. This pocket knife, Swiss Army knife, has many uses. Is it useful? Not at all. First of all, it wouldn't fit in your pocket. And that for me is big data. It's too big to be useful. It has many uses, but it only becomes useful when we start asking the right questions. So the last comment is about making information more supportive, because we are not supporting management as well as we could. And I apologize to anyone that was at Ephemera last year, because I showed this analysis from the Corporate Executive Board last year. And it was analysis that showed that basically market researchers and insights have two basic values to the business. First of all, the new learnings from projects, and the other one is the accumulated knowledge over time. Now, unfortunately, and I've experienced it myself, and I'm sure many of you have too, we tend to stay in our jobs much longer than marketing people do. So we tend to be telling other people in the business about studies that were done before, or experience and knowledge about the customer that they don't have. And they came to the decision that there were in fact 3 phases of development of market research and insight in a company. The first is when you're the methodological expert and data gatherer. The second is insight generator and consultant. And the third is as knowledge synthesizer and socializer. And I see this very much as the move from market research to insight, and now what I am proposing, the customer centricity champion, the voice of the customer of the business. So if we fat cats are going to turn into live lions and win the respect of business by becoming the customer champions, 3 things to remember. Synthesize. Synthesize not only the information from market research, we need to be analysing all the available information within a company. Secondly, we need to socialise more. We need to get out from behind our computers. We need to socialise more with the business so that we become the voice of the consumer. And thirdly, we need to surprise more. There is a lot of information that we don't share, that we know about our customers, coming from studies, either from studies that we have analysed, from market research, or from other data sources, just little nuggets that weren't maybe the project objective, but are interesting to know. And we just keep them for ourselves. We should get out more and share this knowledge with the community and become really the voice of the consumer and the customer within our businesses. So synthesize, socialize, and surprise. And we will become the champion for customers, and we will enable our business to think customer first. So thank you for your time. As Emily's mentioned, I do have a book called Winning Customer Centricity, and I'm offering a pretty hefty 25% discount as a thanks to Baqmar for inviting me here. And I would love to have your ideas and questions. And one thing I didn't ask, I would love to know how many of you think you're already in the winning customer centricity side of the chart that I showed earlier, and how many of you are still in market research and insight? So can I just see, if you're in the agency side, for your main client? How many people think that they or their clients are still in pure market research? The data gatherers and methodological experts. Tom, I don't believe any of your clients are. How many in insight? Okay, so are we all in customer centricity already? Or we're lost? Or I'm holding you up from the drink at the break. Anyway, thank you for your time.